Now let's take more examples on navigation and bearing. But before we take the example, let's recall back on the things we have learned on bearing. The first thing we learned are the 4 cardinal points: the north, south, east, and west. And we understood that the bearing starts from 0 degrees, that's from the north in the clockwise direction, and comes to the east at 90 degrees, comes to the south at 180 degrees, comes to the west at 270 degrees, and finally back to the north at 360 degrees. And we learned that there are 2 types of bearing. We have the true bearing and as well as the compass bearing. The compass bearing involves us using the northeast, the southeast, the northwest, and also the southwest, while the true bearing involves us using maybe 0.45 degrees. You can also have 0.60 degrees, 120 degrees, and the rest. Now we have a question on bearing here. The question says, a village P is 10 kilometers from a point on a bearing of 0.25 degrees from X. Another village Q is 6 kilometers from X on a bearing of 162 degrees. Calculate the bearing and distance of P from Q. Now, this helps us to understand that we have a point X, and whenever we have a point X, we have north, south, east, and west. Now, the first thing we will notice is that a bearing of 0.025 degrees from X goes to village P, which is 10 kilometers away. So if you come here, want to measure 0.125 degrees, we know that this is 0 degrees and this is 90 degrees. So 0.125 degrees will span from this point to this point, and it will move at that angle to village P. So we'll call this angle 25 degrees. Similarly, we have another village Q, and is 6 kilometers from X. Remember, this point is 10 kilometers. Another village Q is 6 kilometers from X at a bearing of 162 degrees. Now, still the same position of X. Remember, we are using position X. And now let's take 162 degrees. Now, remember, this is 180 degrees. And therefore, we want to take 162 degrees. We come from here. Let's move this down to this point. So this point is called 162 degrees. So we have how many kilometers? 6 kilometers. Point Q, which is a distance of 6 kilometers from X, bearing of 162 degrees. Now the question, we can now complete the diagram. Let's complete the diagram. The question now says, calculate the distance and bearing of P from Q. So we are looking for the distance PQ, let's call it X, and the bearing of P from Q. So we are considering from Q, and we are looking for this angle. Remember, we are starting from the north. Let's call this alpha. So let's solve this together now. Looking closely at the diagram, we have 162 degrees here, starting from this point. The remaining angle in this case is 18 degrees. 18 degrees is similar to this angle. And the angle here will be tagged as 180 degrees minus 162 degrees, which will be equals to, or let's say 162 degrees minus 25 degrees, which is equals to 137 degrees. Now we have what we are looking for. We can calculate the angle distance. Let's draw the diagram again for understanding. We are looking for x. We are given 10 kilometers. We have 6 kilometers. The angle here is 137 degrees from point X. Point P, we don't know the angle. Point Q, the angle at point Q, we can resolve everything to give us 18 plus alpha, where alpha is the bearing of P from Q. The bearing of P from Q. So we'll call this angle 18 plus alpha. So yes, now we have summarized the question in the diagram. Calculate the distance x. This distance x can be solved using cosine law. And this angle alpha can be determined using sine law. So let's begin with the distance. So using the distance, we can say that P is equals to 6 kilometers. Since this is the point Q, we can call this Q to be equals to 10 kilometers. So with that, we can easily say that x squared is equals to P squared plus Q squared minus 2PQ cos x. Angle x is 137 degrees. So let's simplify. X squared is equals to P is equals to 6 squared. Q is equals to 10 squared minus 2 into 6 into 10 cosine 137 degrees. Because angle x is 137 degrees. So let's simplify further. Cos 137 using our calculator is equals to minus 0.7314. Now it is negative because it is in the second quadrant. If you look at it, we have 4 quadrants: first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, and the fourth quadrant. In the first quadrant, all is positive. In the second quadrant, only sine is positive. In the third quadrant, only tan is positive. And in the fourth quadrant, only cos is positive. Now 137 degrees falls in the second quadrant, so we have negative. So let's simplify further. So we have x squared will be equals to 36 plus 100, okay, minus 120 multiplied by minus 0.0314. So x squared therefore will be 136. 120 multiplied by 0.7314, and we'll have positive 87.768. So simplifying this, we'll have 223.768. The square root of this would be equals to 14.96 kilometers. Now that we have x to be equals to 14.96 kilometers, we can now easily evaluate our alpha. How do we evaluate our alpha? So we just apply sine rule, and remember, in sine rule, a divided by sine a is equals to b divided by sine b is equals to c divided by sine c. And to that effect, we can just easily change the angle. Since we are dealing with x, we are dealing with p, and also we are dealing with q. So x divided by sine x is equals to p divided by sine p is equals to q divided by sine q. So obvious, this angle here is equals to angle q, and we have this angle to be x, and this angle to be angle p. So with that, do we have, the question now is, we have x and we also have angle x. We have p, but we do not have angle p. Likewise, we have Q, but then our angle Q is equals to 18 plus alpha. Q is equals to 18 plus alpha. Now the question is, let's go back to the question. Calculate the bearing of P from Q, which is alpha. So therefore we are going to be using x divided by sine x to be equated to Q divided by sine Q, so that we evaluate sine angle Q. So let's simplify further. X divided by sine x is equals to Q divided by sine Q. Our length x is equals to 14.96. Our angle x is equals to 137 as sine 137 degrees. Our point length Q is equals to 10 kilometers, and we are looking for sine Q. We are looking for angle Q. That's sine Q. So let's make sine Q so with the formula. So we have sine Q is equals to 10 multiplied by sine 137 degrees divided by 14.96. Now sine 137 degrees using our calculator because of time, which falls in the second quadrant, and we can see here that in the second quadrant only sine is positive, so the result will be positive. So it will give us 10 multiplied by 0.6821 or 6820 divided by 14.96. So with this, we have our sine Q to be equals to 0.4559. So with this, we can easily evaluate our Q using inverse trigonometric function. And we recall that an inverse trigonometric function, where we have sine x is equals to a, x will be arc sine of a. So applying this here now, we have Q to be arc sine of 0.4559. Therefore, this will be equals to 27.12 degrees. That's angle Q. So with that done, if Q is equals to this, and we recall again that Q is equals to 18 plus alpha. So Q, which is equals to 18 plus alpha. Alpha therefore will be Q minus 18, and Q is 27.12 minus 18. So we will have the final answer for the bearing of P from Q to be equals to 9.12 degrees. So now we can write this as, in true compass bearing, as compass bearing we can write it as not 9.12 degrees east, and in terms of the true bearing we will write it as 009.12 degrees. So any of this answer would work. So we can see how bearing has related to both cosine law or cosine rule and also sine rule. Now let's take an exercise on navigation and bearing.